Good morning, everybody. My name's Ode Chene, and I'm the Interim Executive Director of Village Earth. I've been doing work in Indian country since 2009, and we put together with Village Earth this portal called the Native Land Information System, and Emma's going to explain a little bit more about that. But we're specifically here to kick off and introduce our new climate data portal. And Emma was a director of communications here, is going to take us through the portal with some interjection on my end for a few topics, and we'll have a little time for question at the end. So thank you very much for being here and enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, Ode. Yeah, excuse me. Dilaha, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be having this space. My name is Emma Shear. I'm a citizen of the Tolowa Dani Nation in Northwestern California. And as Ode said, I'm the communications director of the Native Lands Advocacy Project. Gonna get into who we are and what we do in a moment, but just a couple housekeeping notes up front. We are recording this meeting, and so if you have to dip out early or you want to consult it again later or even send it to someone that you think might be interested, it'll be up on our YouTube, and you should be getting a follow-up email with a link to it probably in the next few days. And also, we are going to be having a space for Q&A at the end. And so if you have any questions at any point, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box down in the little toolbar. You can drop your questions at any point and we will address them at the end. We also will have our contact info on the last slide if you have a more in-depth question that you think might take some more time, or if you want to consult with us about what we do, we'd love to email with you or even set up a video call. But yeah, just encourage you to share those questions. But let's get started. I'm gonna go to the slides here. There we go. So the Native Lands Advocacy Project, or NLAP, is a project of the 501c3 nonprofit Village Earth. So you might hear the name Village Earth get used as well. Village Earth was founded in 1993 and has over 20 years of experience working in Indian country. And NLAP was kind of a natural extension of that work, founded in 2019 as a dedicated project. And we have kind of two main streams of activity. We do private consulting work with tribes and tribal organizations to provide data support and kind of build custom data packages. Those are on a contract basis. The main activity that we do is on the NLIS, the Native Land Information System, which I'll talk about more in a second. But we take public data sets and we process them for tribal geographies. And so we go to the next slide. We have currently over 120 free public resources, and you can see these topics. They tend to kind of fall in these categories in agriculture and rangeland management, climate adaptation and mitigation, and different historical data sets. I like to emphasize that what we're doing is we're not processing private tribal data unless we're working on a private contract basis, in which case the tribe still owns their data. We're not publishing that on our site. We take these public data sets related to land, agriculture, water, air, data that would be very useful to tribal land planners and climate planners, individual tribal members for their own agricultural planning, but is not very accessible in its published forms. And so we do the work of taking that data, processing it for tribal geographies, and we build these interactive, accessible interfaces, trying to make that data as easy to retrieve as possible. And you'll see an example of that later. That's kind of the general overview of what we do. And obviously, we're all here today because we recently launched our climate data portal. I'm very excited to be sharing this resource. And so I'm going to pass it to Ode to talk a little bit about the background of how this portal came to be and some of the methodologies involved.
Sure, thank you so much, Emma. So this climate data portal kind of came as a need from our partners. The first thing I want to highlight is that we don't do any of this work in a vacuum. As Emma mentioned, Village Earth has over 20 years experience working with tribes and at the grassroots level. And now with this work with the NLIS, we're also involved at the intertribal on the policy level. And so this is all these people we've been weaving relationship with over the years. We call our ecosystem of partners. And this climate data portal really reflects needs that have been highlighted in Indian country as really essential for um, the needs of the time. So a way that we identify those needs is to kind of weave all of these relationship into the methodology. So we have put together a tribal climate advisory committee made up of respected Indigenous scholars in that space, people like Kyle White and Dr. Joseph Brewer and Michael Okototua Johnson as well. And so they were there to really help monitor the progress and kind of identifying or confirming that these were really reflecting some of the priorities that they saw in Indian country. We put together a comprehensive literature review from the publicly available climate adaptation plans completed by tribes. And these were some of the most frequently mentioned topics that are shown at the right. This is kind of like a high level picture of these topics, and we really dive much deeper into the literature review, which you will find publicly accessible on the data portal as well. This climate data portal was developed with support from the Native American Ag Fund. For those of you who are familiar with this entity, that they develop and support sovereign tribal agriculture resources and operations in Indian country. And so they've been supporting us for a few years now, but this was really the first time that I think they supported something that was so much dedicated to climate in this regard. And they have a whole RFP for climate activities as well. So this was really done very organically within feedback loop that we've woven over the years, as explained to you in Indian country, so with our partners, our existing partners, so from the grassroots level all the way to the policy level. And we kind of like to navigate these back and forth because these priorities starts at the ground, and then obviously all the policy that is made as a result of that goes back to the grassroots. So we really hope that this portal reflects some of the needs that you see in your communities. And if not, this is really much a living resource that is meant to evolve over time with your needs. And so this platform is not set in stone. It's just a starting point with key data sets that you might need for your land planning purposes. But yes, it will be evolving over time. Whenever we publish a new resource, we tag it in a certain way that it pops up in the data portals accordingly. So you will be seeing this resource evolve. And we also, as part of this ongoing feedback loop, welcome feedback at any time. And so you will have plenty of opportunities to communicate your questions and feedbacks and comments, and also requests for a particular data set that you'd like to see on the portal. So yeah, so Emma, if you want to continue and take us through some of the hardcore of the data portal.
Yeah, I'm going to walk us through the structure. We try to structure our site in the most navigable and intuitive way, but we do know there are just a lot of resources on it, and sometimes new users are a little daunted. So we're going to just start right from the home page. So the homepage of the Native Land Information System, maybe you're familiar, maybe you're not. You can see that I've highlighted this data portals tab. We have a few different ways of organizing our tools. So the data tools tab is a very direct way if you want to look at a dashboard or a map or a story map, or even access kind of the source data. Those are all options there. And then we also have this topics page over on the right that is pretty much what it sounds like. It's collecting tools by topic. And so, for example, we have a native agriculture and land use topic, and it's just kind of collecting all the relevant tools for that theme. Our data portals tab are for more dedicated spaces, often with more specific purposes. They kind of have their own structures, and they often contain a lot of additional resources too. And so obviously that's where our climate data portal is going to be there. You can see it highlighted. This is the homepage of the climate data portal. This is how you know you're in the right place. If you scroll down on this page, what you're going to find is this menu, and I think it is a video. Let's see how it plays. Maybe it's not going to. There we go. So this is just to show, this is the interactive menu. Now there were a lot of different ways we could have structured the climate data portal, but through that feedback loop that Ode was talking about, through our advisory committee, and through our understanding of tribal climate issues, we decided to structure it along these 5 themes. I'm just going to pause it. There we go. These 5 interconnected themes of air, water, earth, fire, and life. Obviously, there's a little bit of overlap between those. For example, you might find a tool in both fire and air because fire affects air quality. But we thought that this really reflected the holistic and interconnected ways that tribes approach climate planning, and also just the reality of climate issues on our lands, that these issues are all really interconnected. So this also supports a really open-ended approach. We're not trying to dictate one kind or one approach to using this data. It's not just for specific planning documents or applications or anything like that. It's really meant to support whatever needs tribes have. And so if you're looking for water data, that's where you access it. I also want to point to this Learn More button that's highlighted. If you're interested in kind of what Ode was talking about the background of the data portal, how it was developed, and even some reflections on traditional ecological knowledge, that Learn More button is going to take you to a page with a lot more of that information. So just wanted to highlight that briefly. And then if you scroll, let's go, here we go. If you scroll down on this page, I just want to highlight these additional resources at the bottom, because they are, yeah, they're under the menu, so we don't want them to get lost. But these are a bunch of additional resources. You can see there's video tutorials, there's some documents and even links to external organizations that might be useful. And I just want to emphasize, Ode already did, but again, that this climate data portal is intended to be a living resource. We don't exist without the feedback and guidance of our partners and our users. We would have no reason to exist because we're meant to be a resource for those partners and users. So if there is a data set that you're really interested in seeing represented here and it's not yet, we really encourage you to reach out. Also, if there's a way that we can be presenting data that's a bit more useful to whatever you need it for, we just really encourage that feedback. This is an example of what one of these categories looks like. So if you open up the water category, looks like the video is going to be a bit choppy, but this is just an example of what it looks like. So there's a blurb about what tools you can really expect to find within that category. And then we have our dashboards, our maps, our blog posts, and at the bottom, our story maps. So the dashboards and maps are 2 ways of presenting data. Let me just pause this. The dashboards and maps, like I said, are 2 ways of presenting data. They're kind of our main ways of presenting data. I'm going to show an example of a dashboard soon. The story maps and blog posts are really designed to contextualize our data tools. We do a lot of things with them, but for example, we might be demoing a tool and providing a tutorial on how to use it, which is pretty straightforward. We also do a lot of presenting data in context, whether that is historical context or in the context of what's happening at a grassroots level. 2 story maps we released this year that I'd love to highlight are, we have a Good Fire story map, which talks about fire on native lands, talks about wildfire risk, environmental risk, but it also talks about ways that tribes in certain regions are reintroducing fire to their lands for stewardship. So that takes obviously a lot of our fire data, kind of places it within that tribal context. We do a similar thing with buffalo as well. We recently released a buffalo story map. And so these can be great examples if you're curious about, why is this data important? How can it be used? Or what are examples of it being used right now in Indian country? That's what we try to do with those blog posts and story maps. But I'd like to highlight a specific tool. So this is actually not from the water category. I should mention, in that water category, a series of tools that we're really excited about we have some water quality maps. And so there's like pesticides and pH and temperature, I think, are the 3 we have right now. We've had a lot of interest in those tools, so I like to name drop them. But I just want to show you, this is our extent of fires dashboard. Very data rich. There's a lot you can do with this dashboard, and I'm just going to show you a few of the filters and functions. So this is the kind of main page. And I want to highlight these filters. So we have select native land area. And so this is if you want to pull data for your reservation or for another reservation, you can also select multiple, and it's going to kind of collect the data for all of those in one place. But we also are, a change we made as we started developing this climate data portal is we started adding this NCAI region filter. And this is especially important for climate planning because we know that climate change affects bioregions differently. We also know that there's a lot of tribal coalition building and there's a lot of intertribal work being done around climate. And so we wanted to find a way to make it really easy for people to access these regional differences in data without having to go through and select every reservation that's relevant to their interests. So we decided to use the NCAI regions. There are others. The EPA has bioregions. The USDA has agriculture regions. I believe there's also some BIA regions. But of course, we decided to go with NCAI as a way of recognizing tribal sovereignty, and also they created those regions with tribal particularities in mind, which some of those other federal regions would maybe not have at the forefront. So this is just something I wanted to highlight as a way we've made that regional data really easy to access, and we're trying to implement this more and more in our tools. But you'll find it in a lot of these climate data portal tools. This is the second tab of the dashboard, the bioregion tables. This is what I was just talking about. These are the NCAI regions. You can see on this one that the filter is for decade. And so you can view the changing wildfire data across the decades. A kind of unique part of this dashboard is when processing the data, there was some discussion about how to represent fire affecting native lands. And so we have these two categories, the blue and the orange. These are for fires that are entirely within tribal boundaries, that's the blue, and then fires that are crossing tribal boundaries but are also extending outside of them, that's the orange. So two different ways of seeing fire affecting native lands. We hope that is useful to people pulling this fire data. And then the third tab is for the Table Explorer. This is something that almost all, if not all of our tools have. It's direct access to the numbers themselves. So if you're a data nerd, there's a lot to mess around with in here, but you can see those three filters for land area, NCAI region, and then you can also filter for the specific year of fire too. So you can get really granular. Our hope is that, well, not just our hope, but what we know this data is being used for is really for a variety of purposes. It can be used for land planning, for climate planning at the tribal government level, at the intertribal level. It can also be used by individual native landowners and agriculture producers and land caretakers. It can also be used in applications for funding or in reporting. The goal is really, like I said, just to create this greater access to data that already exists in the public domain, but in its existing format is not very accessible for tribal users who would benefit from it. So that is just the example or the presentation of the structure of the portal and an example of one of our tools. We really encourage you, if you're trying to access data, if you're really interested in a data set, but you're having a hard time figuring out the tool itself, please reach out to us. We love to hop on calls with people, screen share, explain how you can use different tools. Our contact info is here. I'm gonna pass it to Ode so she can hop in if I missed anything or if she'd like to add anything.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you all for attending. Yes, there's a few things I wanted to just highlight because I know it can be a little overwhelming and we just had time to explore just one tool. There's really a myriad of tools that we have listed out there. So I really encourage you to go and check it out according to your needs and what really appeals to you. We have data on precipitation, on temperature change, on energy access, renewable energy. We have a drought monitoring tool. We have the change in rain and snow patterns. We have species richness. We have a a data set that's looking at soil organic carbon planning according to different land management scenarios. We have crop diversity, water stress on agricultural lands, tree canopy, soil salinity, intact habitat, and so much more. So I really encourage you to check it out. I would say that what is really special about this climate data portal is that it's really offering different perspectives on climate, and looking at some of the data sets really provide this baseline for climate monitoring, where you can, start at this point in time, and it's more like a screenshot. So we have a lot of instant live data. For instance, the thermal fire map is really looking at this. And then we have other tools that are more about looking at the effect of climate on your lands over time. And some of them date back all the way to 1901, for instance, for one of the data sets. So it's really great to really see that evolution in time. We also have some of these tools that are where other organizations have trusted us to host data, for instance. You might be familiar with a quite successful study that was published in Science. um, Dr. Kyle White was one of the authors, and it was called Effects of Land Dispossession and Forced Migrations on Indigenous Peoples in North America. One of the first study to look at systematically looking at the effect of dispossession and forced migration and with the environmental risks. And so we hosted this data, and so our environmental risk dashboard, that's technically their data that they chose to host on our site. So there's a lot of complexity with our tools. And again, we really encourage your questions. Feel free to really explore this data and get back to us whenever you have time, or want to provide either feedback or ask questions. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to your questions.
Yeah, please feel free to drop any questions you have. We did get one about the link, which I'm realizing I didn't put on that final slide, but pretty simple. Nativeland.info is the URL. So just nativeland as one word, .info. Pretty easy to remember, but I should have put it on there. Thanks for that question. And yeah, feel free to submit any other questions you may have. In the meantime, Ode was explaining to me recently, so I'm the communications team, and sometimes the data team has these conversations and I hear about them later. So Ode was recently explaining to me about our pesticides map that we have. It's a pesticides viewer for native lands. These are based on data that use or it's pulling data from water monitoring stations, and some tribes don't necessarily have water monitoring stations on their reservations. And so recognizing that, one of the functionalities that was built in, Ode, I'd love for you to talk about that. It has its annual pesticide use, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So, because we only focus on publicly available data set, we have to operate within the existing data constraints. We don't collect this data ourselves, right? So we depend on the data entries and the data points that are present in the original data set. So the water monitoring station from the USGS is not complete. There's enough of it, there's enough overlap with native lands that it's significant for a lot of the tribes. But when you don't have a water monitoring station within your tribal boundaries, then we've added a second data sets, which we often do enrich our data sets that way so that they're really relevant to tribal geography specifically. Again, this resource is really tailored for tribal needs as opposed to the way that they're released in a public domain usually. And so what we've added is the county level average, pesticide average. So when you don't have that more specific monitoring station within the tribal geography, you can at least get a baseline data from this county level data. And we do that for a lot of our tools. So they're really well thought out within that process that we've talked about.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
it's a
this.
great example of how we really try to be thoughtful about how our data can be used by our tribal users. Um, as Ode said, working within those existing limitations. There's another question, Ode. Do you want to maybe respond to that one?
Sure, yes. Do we have any information on tribal pedestrian or biking trails? No, we don't. That's not one of our focus as of yet, because we really focus on land use development and tribal, like questions that are really key to tribal sovereignty. So within the realm of agriculture, climate, we have some demographics information because it matters to tribes and because it's often required within applications, for instance, but we do not have information on biking trails.
I know we're looking into kind of infrastructure related data, but I don't even know what data sets would exist for that. That would be interesting to look into. But yeah, thank you.
There any other questions? We're in for a few more minutes.
Mhm.
All right, there's one. Can U-Link be used as a resource or tool for tribal environmental data repository as a way of addressing information or resources that are siloed? I think I would like a little bit more details on that question. What do you mean by addressing the information or resource that are siloed?
Something I will emphasize that I forgot to mention, because we always get asked when we're at conferences presenting our tools, is this a subscription? Is it you have to pay? Our resources are free, and the data interfaces that we build are Creative Commons. So that means you can download them, you can use them in your reports. Please cite us. And of course, the data sources themselves we don't own. But the goal is to create access, right? So we're not putting a paywall on these tools. But yeah, maybe a little bit more context on that second question would be great. Or you can email us if you'd like. We'd love to set up a meeting. If you want to talk about that in more detail.
Something I wanted to add also on what you said, Emma, is a question that we often get asked because we are using publicly available data sets, but since data sovereignty is really important for tribes, and that's a question that we often get asked out of obviously the legitimate worries that tribes have regarding data extraction and all of these issues that are really been historically an issue and still are. Um, we so this is oftentimes a question we get about what's the threat or danger basically of some of these data tools, and our answer is pretty much in line with our methodology, but you'll assess for yourself what you think of it. Um, these data tools are in the public domain, so they're already widely accessible. So, if a corporation or people want to do it, want to use it to do harm or cause harm to native communities or use it for extractivism or resource extraction, they have the internal resources to do it. They have the GIS team to extract this data, access it as they please. And the granularity is oftentimes not necessarily useful for specific, drilling plans or anything like that, but they would have the resource to access it. The people who do not have access are oftentimes tribes who do not have the internal capacity because they don't have, they cannot afford, for instance, an in-house GIS staff. And these are really the reasons why this resource exists, is particularly for tribes who do not have access, whereas this is data that's in a public domain that should be accessible to all. Um, so, Emma, is there anything else that you wanted to add to conclude?
Yeah, as we wrap up, there was a final question about do we offer training on the use of the NLIS? And the answer is yes. In a variety of capacities. That's part of why we're doing these webinars. We have video tutorials for individual tools, and we're trying to do more of those in the coming year because we know how useful they are. We do one-on-one consultations. We'll get on a video call with you. If we're talking about something more formal, we'd have to have a meeting and talk about that, like a partnership with an organization or something like that. But yes, we want people to use these tools. We want them to be accessible. So training is a big part of what we do. And please reach out if that's something that you're interested in looking into more. Yeah. But this is the end of our time. Thank you all so much for attending. I will say it again. I've said it a few times. I'll say it again. Please reach out if you have any further questions. We will be sending out this link. Please share it if you know anyone who would benefit from this portal, and look out for more from us. We'll be doing some more webinars like this throughout the year. and you can get on our mailing list. That QR code on the slide is a link to a bunch of our resources, mailing list, our social medias, and some of our like blog posts and data tools. So yes, thank you, thank you. All right. How do I, how do I stop? All right, goodbye everyone, thank you.